Hello and welcome once again to the Brett Chat Sports or BCS Podcast. This episode is going to be an English Premier League 2024-25 season review. And let's start with the champions Liverpool, who equalled Manchester United's record of 20 top-flight English league titles with their win this season. This is what Liverpool fan Andrew Beasley had to say in the season preview episode.
Generally, the sort of optimism is there, I think, regarding Slot. He did a very good job at Feyenoord, won the Dutch league with them, didn't retain it, but did so with the highest points total in club history last season. So, you know, he looks ready for a step up to a big league job, and hopefully he proves that with Liverpool. In terms of what they might achieve this season, I think it would be a big ask for them to win the league with a new manager coming in and as yet no signings. Equally, the same squad was top in, I think, the first week of April last season, so they didn't fall that far short. Perhaps Slot's slightly more possession-focused, balanced style will mean that the team doesn't get quite so worn out chasing games.
And here's what he had to say now.
In terms of meeting the expectations, I said in the video I recorded before it all got underway that I thought they would finish in the top four, but clearly they outdid that by winning the league. I don't think anyone could have expected that at the start of the campaign, but it's an incredible achievement by a team without really any new players and with a brand new manager. There are really no other notable achievements to talk about because once you've done that, what else is there to say, really? I guess you could say there were some disappointments along the way in terms of losing the Carabao Cup final and also going out of the Champions League in the round of 16. But even with that, they were beaten only on penalties by Paris Saint-Germain, who will be in the final. So they could easily have gone out to the team that will prove to be the champions of Europe. In terms of standout players, obviously Mohamed Salah is the most obvious name to mention because he led the Premier League for both goals scored and assists, which is pretty remarkable. Virgil van Dijk also captained the team really well. He had a great season. But I think the man who deserves most credit in a different way is probably Ryan Gravenberch because he didn't play a huge amount for Liverpool last season and he's changed position and started more or less every game, all the important games anyway. And he's just done really well in not an unfamiliar role completely across his career, but unfamiliar during his time with Liverpool. So he definitely deserves a lot of credit for how he did this season. Arne Slot's done an incredible job winning the league in his first attempt at it. And when you look at his career, he's achieved something in every full season he's had. You know, he's had Alkmaar second in the league when the Eredivisie was stopped because of the coronavirus. He took Feyenoord to the Conference League final. He won the league. He got their highest ever points tally. And now he's won the league with Liverpool. So he seems to be just a really special managerial talent.
Given that they're the champions, plenty of analysis has been done about Liverpool over the course of the season. And I'm not about to repeat it here. You are perfectly capable of going away and finding it yourself wherever you like to read analysis. What I will say is that I saw a very good piece of analysis at the start of May saying how Jurgen Klopp had increasingly had his wide forwards playing closer and closer to the touchline in his final season, whereas Arne Slot has brought those wide forwards into more central positions, and that is why guys like Luis Diaz and Mohamed Salah have arguably played better and had more influence this season. Congratulations to Liverpool on winning the championship. In second, for the third consecutive season, were Arsenal. Here's what Arsenal fan and friend of the show, Freddie Law-Keen, had to say in the season preview episode.
The big questions going into this season is second in the Premier League, going into the last day, ending second, quarterfinals Champions League, and then round 4 in the Carabao and the third round of the FA Cup. These knockout competitions, we need to be showing ourselves to be a serious threat in them. A serious threat. We need to be penciling ourselves in for these semi-finals. We need to get ready to win these trophies. And if you don't have experience going distance, then those big matches get harder and harder. And we need to solidify ourselves as quarterfinals minimum of the Champions League, because that's where the big teams play. If you're there every year in those last 8 teams, then you are known as a place to be and a team to be.
And here's what he has to say now.
I think the team didn't meet expectations this season. I think if I ran my review back, I probably predicted a win. Premier League win this year. due to 2 second-place finishers and each year getting better and better. What I didn't see is, Liverpool's instant overturn into being such a superb team this year. A lot of things went their way, but they had no challenge. They were absolutely incomparable in the end. I think notable achievements for the season is with all the injuries and a lot going against us is finishing second 3 years in a row. As painful as it is, it does show our consistency. It does show the team can roll with numerous punches and stay competitive at all courses. I think the standout players in the season are David Raya from the first half of the season, where every single week he came in with game-saving, match-defining performances and saves, and calmness at the back, which is a joy to watch. Gabriel, I think, led the defence, and when we lost him for the season, I think he raised his importance even more, if that wasn't abundantly clear. And there's 2 incredible header goals away at Tottenham and away at City to show his power and threat from set pieces. And then for the last half of the season, Declan Rice, his performance today, this is a Premier League review, but I mean his performances in the Champions League can't go amiss, going to Real Madrid and absolutely dominating but the midfield in both those ties. It was majestic to watch. It was superb, and you bring players in for that money and you want that impact, and Declan Rice really showed this year that he is that guy for our snobs. I think the signings are pretty obvious. I think we need definitely a backup goalkeeper, another midfielder, which looks to be Martin Zubimendi possibly coming in, and we also need a winger and a striker, as we did all of last season. The pressure on those 2 signings will never be greater, and this should be the last season that the club kind of gets full backing on that, because the messaging gets a little bit tired. There's only so much we can trust the process when everyone, every fan, every partner of every fan, every dog of every fan could have seen last year that we needed attackers at every stage, and through true transfer windows we were denied those chances, and it cost us greatly. We didn't have a single player to hit 10 goals in the Premier League, which I think is the first time for Arsenal. Where it's staggering. It's staggering that we don't have a single 10-goal player. Obviously, with Saka and Havertz out for large portions of the season, that explains it, but it does show that someone to lead the line in those situations is dearly missing.
By mentioning David Raya, Gabriel and Declan Rice, what Freddie is doing there is highlighting what a good spine Arsenal has. As he says, though, they need a centre-forward if they are to push on. They need an Erling Haaland or a Harry Kane type. Not that they would ever be able to get either of those players. But if Arsenal can go out in the summer and get someone like Benjamin Sesko or Dusan Vlahovic, then that could be the catalyst they need to really push on and maybe even win the title next season. Filling out the Champions League places this season were Manchester City, Chelsea and Newcastle United, who ended up getting that final 5th place Champions League place solely on goal difference over Aston Villa. Here is what Newcastle fan and friend of the show, Jo Lenton, had to say about Newcastle United's season.
It was one of those weird seasons, actually, because at the end of yesterday I did feel a bit of an anticlimax, which is stupid, because one, we won our first trophy for 70 years, a domestic trophy, and 2, we're in the blooming Champions League again, which I'm actually really excited about, but we lost the last game, so it all feels a bit weird. But that said, it's been an amazing season, considering in December we were 12th, and then we won that cup final against Liverpool, and then went on a massive tear, which I was actually quite confident we would do, because the high of that final just pushed us through. So summertime, we need to make some signings, probably a keeper, definitely someone to back up Isak, because Callum Wilson will be off. Great servant to the club, but just, time to move on. Jacob Murphy's had a stormer of a season, but again, I think it's time he probably needs a bit of an upgrade, but he'll still be a massive part of the squad because he had an incredible season. Isak's obviously a ledge. And then, centre-back probably, and see how we get on. But, funny one. Feel a bit weird after yesterday, but all in all, what more can I ask for? We won a blooming trophy. Come on.
By virtue of the fact that they won the Europa League final, Tottenham become an unprecedented 6th English Champions League representative in next year's competition. This is in spite of the fact that they finished 17th in the Premier League table. And so there has to be a lot of work done over the summer to make that a better team. I don't know if that is because of injuries or whatever, but Tottenham very clearly disappointed in this season's Premier League, and that Europa League final win really was the saving grace and has been in many ways a sticking plaster over a lot of the horrors and the indignities that Spurs have suffered this season. As mentioned, Aston Villa missed out on the Champions League solely on goal difference. They will, however, automatically go into next year's Europa League group stage, where they will also be joined by the FA Cup winners Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace again had a very solid season. They are established as a good, surefire mid-table team at this point. And you do have to wonder if they maybe just get the right signing here or there over the summer, if they can maybe push on in the Premier League and start to threaten those European places a bit more, because there is certainly a lot of quality in that team. They are just arguably a very small team, certainly relative to the other London teams, and so they don't necessarily have the financing that other teams in the Premier League have. Arguably one of the surprise stories of this season's Premier League were Nottingham Forest, who ended up finishing in 7th, 1 point behind Aston Villa, and so only 2 points away from the Champions League places. Nottingham Forest had a fantastic season, and it's all credit to them that they turned their fortunes around, having battled relegation in the previous 2 seasons. Nuno Espirito Santo has clearly done a lot of good things with this team, and it'll be very interesting to see what they now do in the summer to see if they can potentially push on and start to threaten those European places more consistently. Another surprise of this Premier League season would be the performance of Manchester United, who ended up finishing 15th in the Premier League table. In the season preview episode, I backed them to make the European places. At no point did I ever think that they would be a serious title contender, but I certainly thought that they would be in the top end of the table, seriously competing for either one of that last Champions League place or at the very least a Europa League place. The fact that they are now down in 15th at the end of the season, for me a lot of it is to do with what happened last summer. Jim Ratcliffe brought in new people like Dan Ashworth and Jason Wilcox, and they together decided to retain Erik ten Hag and then backed him in the transfer market, before then firing him a couple of months into the season and bringing Ruben Amorim in. That clearly caused a lot of upheaval over Old Trafford, along with all of the other things that Jim Ratcliffe is doing behind the scenes at the club, and that cannot have helped any of the playing staff in what they were doing on the field. For me, Ruben Amorim is clearly a talented coach. I don't think he's the right man for Manchester United, and I would not be surprised to see him leave in the near future, and Ratcliffe and his Ineos team bring someone else in new, again causing even more upheaval. It is arguably an indignity for one of England's most successful teams, certainly in the Premier League era, and there is a part of me who, even though I don't support the team, I want to see them get back up towards that top end and be challenging, because it makes the Premier League more interesting the more serious challenges there are for that title. Finally, moving on to the 3 relegated teams. Here is what I had to say about the relegation contenders in the season preview episode. For all the inspiration that Ipswich Town's journey these past 2 seasons from League One straight up to the Premier League has provided, I can't help but think that the Premier League is going to be a step too far for them, and that they, along with the 2 promoted teams, Nottingham Forest and maybe even Wolves, could all be in the relegation battle this season. And so it came to be. All 3 of last season's promoted teams were relegated. And it has to be said, this is in spite of the fact that all three teams have got some very good talent in them. Ipswich Town, have got some very good players there. There was maybe just a little bit lacking in quality, and they just needed a bit more in certain areas of the pitch, and they would have been more competitive. But it was certainly a very admirable and respectable showing on their part, and you would think that the experience of playing in the Premier League for this season and the money that comes with it is going to set Ipswich up to be able to potentially come straight back up next season, having had the experience of playing at a higher level, knowing the levels that they need to get at, and having the money to be able to build that team in the Championship next season that can automatically get back into the Premier League next season, potentially. It has to be said, when it comes to relegated teams, that I never thought that Southampton was seriously trying to compete at all. I'm sure that the owners and the management and everyone at Southampton would argue otherwise, but for me, there was no real serious investment in the team last summer, and nothing was really done to help Russell Martin keep that team in the league. There is, of course, talent in that team. The most obvious example would be the emergence of Tyler Dibbling, and you do wonder if they are now going to sell Tyler Dibbling at an inflated price, given that he is a talented young English player, and that they will then use that money to build a more competitive team to get back into the Premier League and hopefully compete far better than they did this season, when it has to be said, every game that they went into, I was thinking that the other team were going to get 3 points. The same is in many ways true for Leicester City. There is certainly talent in that team, and I personally thought that they had every chance of staying up. But again, there was just that lack of quality there. They needed more in different areas of the pitch to supplement the quality that they had. And it may be that, again, they use the money and they use the parachute payments that they get from this season in the Premier League to consolidate their position, put themselves on a surer footing in terms of financial fair play, because that arguably was one of the things that in many ways kind of new to Leicester, was that they were having to deal with financial fair play restrictions given how much they spent to get back into the Premier League. And so let's see what they now do in the Championship next season, and if they are able to come straight back up. For now, that is the end of this English Premier League 2024-25 season review episode. As always, thank you so much for joining me, and I certainly do hope to see you next time. Bye bye now. The BCS Podcast is written, produced, edited and hosted by me, Brett Walker. Thank you to Boris Anderoff and Pixabay for the use of the music and sound effects in this podcast. This episode features contributions from Andrew Beasley, Freddie Law-Keen and Jo Lenton.